Now, the resignation of André De Ruyter as the Eskom CEO has been met with mixed reaction from all quarters of society, with some saying it's long overdue. De Ruyter announced his resignation on Wednesday, but will stay on until March of next year. For some perspective around this, I'm now joined by Pieter Du Toit, Assistant Editor of Investigations at News 24, to chat more on these developments at the power utility. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time, Peter. The Eskom's outgoing group's chief executive has given perhaps the clearest reason for his resignation, saying he lost the support of the political economy. Now, at which point did we begin to see the support wane?
Good afternoon. Well, yes, look, political support for De Ruyter probably started to wane with the appointment of the new board in October, when the CEO's relationship with the Minister of Public Enterprises seemingly also turned sour. Since then, there has been a series of public attacks on him by the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources, Willem Mantashe, which, of course, the week before last culminated in the quite extraordinary attack on him, alleging that Eskom is agitating, or the Eskom management and leadership is agitating for the overthrow of the state. And after that, I mean, it was pretty clear that his position became untenable. Neither his line function minister in Pravin Gordhan nor the new chairperson of the board, bothered to defend him in public. And quite ironic, given that on the opening day of the ANC's conference, President Cyril Ramaphosa committed his government again to the roadmap devised by André De Ruyter to ensure energy security. So he is a victim of ANC internal politics and ANC internal factional politics, I would argue.
Yeah. So looking at that argument and the task that was ahead and what he found at Eskom and what he had to fix, given the time frame, I mean, around 3 years, as we break down the years and the tasks that he had to accomplish, what would you say has been achieved? Because looking at where we're standing today, it almost seems like not much was done with the rolling and constant power cuts.
Look, I think there exists quite a yawning gap in people's knowledge about what the depth and the breadth of the damage at Eskom is. To repair Eskom, or to get to a space or a place where we could bring down load shedding in the space of less than 3 years is impossible. The state of Eskom I can summarize in 3 parts. One, infrastructure has been totally decimated almost over the last decade, primarily because of poor maintenance being put on the back burner by a succession of Eskom management teams. With that, the exodus of skills over a period of many years, which means that maintenance, those people that knew those machines well, left the company, which means maintenance was not done. Added to that, the financial situation, which means that they could not procure and buy the necessary spares. So that's the one thing. The second thing is poor management over the last 15 years, which is very clear, has led to an erosion of internal corporate governance, internal culture, which has led in turn to the third thing, which is a massive reason for Eskom's demise, is corruption. Now, there exists within Eskom hundreds, if not thousands, of extraction networks linked to Eskom procurement, which annually entails something like 180 billion rands related to the 15 coal-fired power stations. So criminality, corruption, poor management, and lack of maintenance have combined over the last 15 years to put us into the position that we're in now. De Ruyter, it was simply impossible for him to turn that around in less than 2 years, and especially if he did not have the political support which he initially indeed did have. So whomever is going to succeed André De Ruyter will be faced with exactly the same problems, and I would venture to guess that things much worse before it's going, because if you don't have the political support to implement something, for example, like a well-considered and urgent maintenance program, these power stations are going to break down. Not even to mention Willem Mantashe's absolute lack of urgency to ensure that new generation capacities installed onto the grid. De Ruyter and his management team told this to the government in January 2020, and absolutely nothing has been done by government to make sure that we get new generation capacity online. So in the end, I would say André De Ruyter was on a hiding to nothing, and that within the governance and government environment of the African National Congress, I'm speaking to you from Nasrec, where it has been absolute chaos for 3 days, and working in that environment, I think it's impossible.
Yeah. You mentioned criminality, and as you and I speak, we know that the SANDF has been roped up by President Cyril Ramaphosa to go across the country's power stations and guard those power stations because of the acts of sabotage that we've been learning of. And of course, André De Ruyter himself spoke quite extensively around the impact of sabotage and how far it's gone.
Look, it's very cynical that a lot of things are happening now that De Ruyter is left. There has been not only active political sabotage against them over a period of a good couple of months, but there's been active sabotage at power stations. And De Ruyter has repeatedly asked the government, the national executive ministers, law enforcement, to help him try and secure South Africa's very brittle generation capacity by deploying either police, the Hawks, or the military to these power stations. He's been singularly unsuccessful to enlist political support. Now, within days after his resignation, the announcement comes that they're deploying the army to these power stations, which makes you wonder about the fact that they simply wanted to get rid of him. And just to reiterate the point, when President Cyril Ramaphosa delivered his political speech, his political report two nights ago, he committed his government to a roadmap to end load shedding, and he also committed his government to the Just Energy Transition plan that was devised in this country. Now, both of those plans are André De Ruyter's plans. So government will stick to his plans, but they won't stick with him as the leader of the organization.
And on that note, we know that there's a lot of unfinished business that De Ruyter leaves behind. As you speak about who will next step into his shoes, there is quite a daunting task ahead, especially looking at the Just Energy Transition program.
There is, and you need someone as the chairperson of the Eskom board and as the group chief executive of Eskom to assert his or her independence from the state. In the past, there has been we've seen a succession of very weak boards and even weaker chief executives that have acquiesced to every whim of the political principle, whether it is to keep the power stations running at all costs, or whether it is to tone down the maintenance programs. And I have to say, last week's performance by the new chair, Paul Makwana, does not augur well to ensure the independence of the board from the state and from the shareholder. Of course, there needs to be interaction between the shareholder and the board, but they cannot intervene operationally. They cannot intervene operationally with the CEO or the COO, and I do think that's going to happen in future, because I do think this is a board that is appointed with political decisions in mind, and we're probably going to see the chief executive being appointed that will be subservient to the minister and cabinet in the end, to the whims of factional politics in the ANC.
Very well. Thank you so much. Let's perhaps leave it there for now. Pieter Du Toit, Assistant Editor of Investigations at News 24, speaking around the reasons for the resignation of André De Ruyter, his decision to leave Eskom as CEO, of course serving out that term until next year in March.